Welcome back to the Warehouse Podcast. My name is Jesse. Sorry for the delay here in getting an episode up. We sort of missed our usual schedule of the midweek episode, but I am here to record, sort of to go over a little bit of what happened last week and to sort of discuss two changes that the Orioles have had in the last few days due to guys returning from injury. So the Orioles have relatively had a pretty good week. Initially, we dropped two out of three from the Milwaukee Brewers. Tony Mansolino against the Brewers did get his first win as the Orioles manager. And then the Orioles, after dropping the first two games to the Boston Red Sox, actually were able to fight back, win the second game of a doubleheader on Saturday, and end up splitting the series with a win on Sunday in the four-game set in Boston against the Red Sox. So the Orioles relatively had a better week, able to rack up three wins, which is not, has not been typical so far for the Orioles this year. And this has been the Orioles are actually playing right now as well, and they're beating the St. Louis Cardinals 5-2 in the top of the seventh. So there have been some slight positive indications from the Orioles, a bit improved performance over the past week. So things have been relatively, this has been a pretty good week for the Orioles, relative, especially to how the season has gone. So, basically, so the Orioles have gotten two big players back from the injured list, which has been important. And one of them had a contribution to the Orioles, even though it did come in a loss to the Boston series. The Orioles have gotten Trevor Rogers back from the injured list, and joining him was also Andrew Kittredge, who is rejoining the bullpen. So these are two pretty. I mean, I'll talk sort of about the extent of what we can expect from the impact of their return. But overall, these are two positive additions to the Orioles. Trevor Rogers, especially with where this rotation has been at, is sort of a welcome addition. And also Kittredge as well, just given a lot of the use of the bullpen, the overuse of the bullpen, and certain bullpen arms have been going through a recent struggle. So it's been good to be able to add him into the mix in the back end of the bullpen, where hopefully Kittredge can stay healthy for a while and make some contributions for the O's uh, in the next few weeks and or months. Um, we'll sort of go one by one here. We could talk about Trevor Rogers first. So, as I referenced, he did pitch in the first game of the doubleheader against the Boston Red Sox. Now, the Orioles did end up losing that game in a rather frustrating way. But Trevor Rogers did pitch well. He pitched six and a third. He had five strikeouts in the inning. And Trevor Rogers, he's going to be, we will see what he ends up doing for the Orioles. He is a bit of a variable. He's had a rather inconsistent career to some extent. In 2021, he was an all-star. So he had a really good performance in 2021. But then, other than that, throughout his career, it's sort of ranged from bad to injured to really bad at certain points. Or maybe I shouldn't say bad, but sort of mediocre-ish, you know. So he has never been a fully realized superstar exactly in this game. And he did spend a lot of his career, of course, prior to the Orioles, in Miami with the Marlins. So that's not a, of course, that's not a great environment to be coming up, especially as a young player and a young pitcher in. But so far, we saw him briefly a little bit for the Orioles last year. It didn't go great as far as we were concerned. He pitched 19 innings. He had a 7.11 ERA, so he was not effective overall. But of course, you're not going to necessarily judge a player based on 19 innings. Yeah, and he came back, and has, at least in his one start, granted, if we're not judging people in 19 innings, we're not going to judge them in six and a third either. But so far in 2025, he's been off to a good start with that six and a third innings pitched against the Red Sox. It was also an important start for the Orioles to have, even though they ended up losing that game. It was important that he was able to contribute that because the Orioles bullpen was really beleaguered at that point. They were in the doubleheader at that point in the series. So if he had not been able to give them the six and a third, and let's say he had pitched two and a third instead, it would have really put a lot of strain and stress on the bullpen, and probably would have set the Orioles up not as nicely to win the final two games of the series. So even though it was his effort was sort of wasted by the Orioles with a loss, overall for the series, it probably had a positive impact for the team overall. I should also just add, just because it can't really go unacknowledged, the Orioles did have another really frustrating and embarrassing loss against the Red Sox in the second game of the series, where the Orioles ended up giving up 19 runs. We ended up having to pitch Emmanuel Rivera for the last inning of the game after CNL Perez had sort of made a mess of things on his own. And yeah, the O's ended up losing that game 19-5 in a game that we were winning. Sir Anthony Dominguez sort of let the lead slip, and then just things spiraled downward from there. So I should just sort of throw that in. It has not, of course, it's not the same, and it's not quite as bad as the loss that we had against Cincinnati, where the Orioles gave up 24 runs, but still losing a game and giving up 19 runs is, probably should not happen over the course of an entire season for a major league team. I actually wonder about what the statistics on that are, like what percentage of teams in a major league season have a game where they give up 19 runs. I don't know. I'd be curious to see that, but I would venture to guess that it's actually below half and maybe even below a third of the teams. Of course, you can imagine, the real bad teams in baseball, the Rockies, and of course the White Sox giving up 19 runs, but at some point over the course of a season. But I would guess it's less than a third, or at least less than half, I would say, give up 19 runs. But in any case, just putting that aside, yeah, so the Orioles had this really tragic game on Friday, which is worth noting. But in any case, so yeah, Trevor Rogers really had a big start for the Orioles. And as far as going forwards, what to sort of expect, he probably will. He's definitely an upgrade, I think, for the Orioles at this point in the season. Chase McDermott, when he was activated, was optioned. So I think it is fair to say that Rodgers is going to be an upgrade over McDermott. The plan for McDermott was probably never to hold down that spot indefinitely. He got his major league debut in and got some opportunity. and now he's going to probably go back, work on some things for, with the idea for him to return potentially later this season, especially with how the Orioles are going. But at a bare minimum, next season, at the very latest. Um, yeah, so I think that the fact that Rogers comes in, he replaces McDermott, it's definitely a net positive for this Orioles rotation. Now, sort of as I sort of said before, uh, I mean, Trevor Rogers is not going to be an ace or a front end of the rotation starter. The Orioles, when they acquired him, probably never had that in mind. If you uh, think about him, you look at his career, other than, as I mentioned, that one season where he was really, really good, he's hovered in between the 4 and the 5 sort of range for his entire career in terms of ERA. And he had a couple seasons, even in 2022, right after his All-Star year I'm sorry, yeah, in 2022, right after his All-Star year in 2021, he went from a 2.64 ERA over 133 innings to a 5.47 ERA in 107 in 2022. So he's had some years where he's had really, really not good performances and not good seasons overall. So I don't think it's fair to expect him to be somebody other than a 5 or a 4, probably at his best. Um, a four, a number 4 starter in the rotation. But with that said, for right now, that's valuable for the Orioles. The Orioles are lacking the front end of the rotation starters. So he is going to play a very, very critical role for the Orioles in just kind of stabilizing things, at least as far as this rotation goes. Yeah, I mean, I don't think like he's definitely going to as I said, be an upgrade over McDermott. He probably will have some starts on occasion where he does what he did against the Red Sox and gives us 6 or 7 solid innings without any significant downsides. With that said, they're going to be downsides isn't exactly the right word. Isn't he's going to give us 6 or 7 innings of very good baseball and very good pitching that will allow the Orioles to compete. But with that said, he's also probably going to have some clunkers where he gets removed in the third or fourth inning, and things are sort of a mess. So that's sort of what you expect from a back end of the rotation starter. There are going to be some starts where they go 5 innings, 3 runs, or 6 innings, 3 runs, as sort of the good. And then in this situation, like 6 1/3 shutout, right? So they're going to be starts like that, but they're also going to be the starts where they don't make it through the third and fourth. So that's what the Orioles are going to sort of have to brace for when that happens. He's also sort of an option in certain situations if the Orioles rotation was to be a bit more competent than it is right now, to be sort of a middle inning, a long reliever type, which is definitely a role that on a good Orioles team he might have found himself in this year. But with how things are, he's of course too critical to the rotation right now for the Orioles to even contemplate having him move to the bullpen, even in a long man role. Um, so yeah, that's been the one addition that the Orioles have had back. And the second, of course, is Andrew Kittredge. Now, Kittredge is a bit different. The Orioles acquired Kittredge through free agency rather than through trade. Now he's a bullpen pitcher. And the Orioles in the offseason gave him $9 million. And there was a club option of $9 million for 2026 as well. But it was just the buyout was a $1 million deal. So the buyout, if the Orioles did not pick up the option, was an additional $1 million. So the Orioles sort of were guaranteeing this guy at least $10 million over the course of a season. And for a reliever, that is an indication, right, that you are a pretty good reliever, right? Now, there are reasons why it wasn't a longer term deal, et cetera. But 1 year for $10 million for a reliever at this point in Major League Baseball is a pretty good contract for a reliever. You're probably a better reliever or closer to uh, a seventh or eighth inning type pitcher if you're getting a $10 million deal. And that's sort of what he is, right? So Kittredge is a very, very interesting pitcher in a lot of ways. He is very, very uh, reliant, I guess is the right word, on his slider. But the slider is a great pitch for him, right? So he's interesting because he used the slider in 2024, 49% of the time. That was the most frequent pitch that he threw. And despite being sort of a more back end of probably not an eighth or ninth inning guy, but definitely a seventh. And despite being sort of a more back end reliever, he doesn't throw very hard. He only throws 94, 95, which is more or less common in Major League Baseball. And he only throws a four seamer 13% of the time and a sinker 37% of the time. Now, the sinker ends up being more or less comparable in velocity to the four seamer. So it's not like he loses a lot of velocity with the sinker, as also is, more or less common in Major League Baseball. But he really, really relies on this slider. That's like his out pitch. In 2024, he was in the 100th percentile um, for chase percentage. And the vast majority of the time, that's coming on the slider. Now, because the slider is his best pitch, his best weapon. Of course, as a right-handed pitcher, he's going to be generally more effective against right-handed hitters with that slider going away from the righties rather than to the lefties where it's coming into them. So he's more a guy that you like to be matched up against right-handed hitters. But overall, his presence in the bullpen, especially at this time for the Orioles, who are starting to really go through some bullpen troubles, a lot, I think, can be attributed to the poor performance of the starting rotation. Um, but this is really a critical time for this bullpen to get some insurance, right? So it's really, really important that Kittredge has sort of arrived at this time, take a little bit of the pressure off Sir Anthony Dominguez, off Yennier Cano, off Gregory Soto, etc. So some of those guys have started to scuffle recently, started to not be as effective. So now Kittredge can come in and sort of be another option for Mansolino going forward. So, yeah, and Kittredge, I mean, the thing about him, he's 35 at this point in his career, but last year for St. Louis, very, very effective. He pitched 70 innings, had a 2.80 ERA. So he's definitely a very capable bullpen pitcher, and he's going to be, I think, helpful for the Orioles going forward. We're going to be able, of course, you always want more sort of back end type options. And the Orioles sort of we have Felix Bautista, and then maybe we have Yennier Cano, and then sort of we have like some combination of Dominguez, Soto, and now Kittredge that can sort of fill in potentially for the eighth inning or rotate through the seventh innings, or come in the sixth in a critical jam or something like that, for the Orioles. So it really, I think, is coming at a big time for the Orioles, that he returns, and hopefully, this is going to be the start of, at least some sort of improvement, with the addition of both of these guys. So, some improvement with what we've seen from the pitching just in general this year. The one thing that is really worth noting about Kittredge, um, we might also be auditioning him for a deadline trade. It's definitely possible, especially with how bad the Orioles have been. There's not really a lot of purpose for keeping him this year. And if even if the Orioles do have sort of a hope to contend next year, which I think is very questionable at this point. I don't think that. I mean, Tyler talked about this a couple episodes ago, but I don't really think that it's realistic or possible, for the Orioles to really pretend or act as if like this year never happened and we're just picking up next year right where we left off, at the end of 2024, right? So I don't think that's really possible. I don't think that's where the Orioles are at, and I don't think it's realistic to sort of expect that the Orioles can go from whatever we end up being this year, some 70 win team, 60 win team potentially, and then all of a sudden uh turn into a 90 win team the next year. It just probably won't happen. So and even if you did have this sort of hope to contend next year for the Orioles, and the Orioles are like, no, we want to save Kittredge, and then we want to take him up on his club option next year. It doesn't really make a lot of sense because you're not getting any substantive value out of him this year, for any potential playoff push. I mean, you're getting value out of him, but it's not amounting to anything, right? It's just this is a wasted year for the Orioles, right? So because of that, you're sort of paying him. You'd be paying him half of this year's salary, whatever that the exact figure on that is, 4 million, 5 million, by the time of the deadline. You're paying him, that amount of salary plus the club option salary for the entirety of next year, where it just doesn't make a lot of sense from the Orioles perspective. So the Orioles could definitely get something back for him, especially if he pitches well. I think he would be an attractive um, pitcher for a lot of teams, especially with that club option. They could have him for this year, try to make a playoff push with him. And then they can sort of have the flexibility. Do we want him the year after? Do we not want him the year after? And they can sort of decide that and make that decision for themselves. So, he is a guy that I think is going to be a big trade candidate, somebody who's going to get a good amount of discussion in within the rumor universe of Major League Baseball, when it comes closer to the Orioles. Well, I was going to say the Orioles trade deadline, but just the Major League Baseball trade deadline. And especially if he pitches well, it's going to be even more tantalizing for some of the other teams in Major League Baseball to try to acquire him. So, um, in the meantime, we will have the benefit of Andrew Kittredge in the bullpen until we decide to not have him anymore and to deal him away. But overall, I think it's going to be he's going to be helpful for the Orioles in the short term. If you're worried about the Orioles winning games right now, I think he's going to be helpful for that. And then hopefully he pitches well, and then he's going to have the Orioles are going to be able to deal him at the deadline to a contender, for potentially a few interesting prospects. So that would be the hope for the O's at this point for him. Yeah, so we'll see. In the short term, hopefully the Orioles are making some slight improvements. Maybe the Orioles can build on this positive week that we just had, more or less, and then hopefully continue getting healthy. Me and Eli both, and I think probably Tyler, I would imagine too projected at the beginning of the year, the Orioles getting stronger as the season goes on. Of course, we didn't expect the first half to look or the first quarter plus to look how it did. But we do think the Orioles will get better as we go along. We still do sort of I think the three of us sort of hold that opinion. I certainly hold that opinion. I can just speak for myself right now. I think the Orioles will get better and stronger as the season goes along. Not, of course, just to be extra careful not to make any playoff push potentially, but just to improve going forward. So, um, and getting Kittredge and getting Trevor Rogers back, at least for now, is a good step in that direction for the Orioles. So, all right. That'll wrap it up for this show. Thank you all so much for listening. Feel free to follow the show. Please give us a 5-star rating and review. We have a YouTube channel. You can subscribe to us over there, like this video. Please feel free to comment with any thoughts, ideas, opinions, agreements, or disagreements that you have with this analysis. If you want to get in touch with the show, please email us, thewarehousepod@gmail.com. Feel free to follow us on Instagram and Blue Sky at The Warehouse Pod. Thank you all so much for listening. This has been The Warehouse Podcast. My name is Jesse, and go O's.